Hello there. My name is Chanda Chongo from the Ask podcast by the Alliance for Community Action. Now, 2026 has been a busy year for Zambia's democratic corridors, law reforms, August general election preparations, and citizens demanding accountability. In this episode of our podcast series, Laws and Elections, we examine Zambia's new electoral reforms and their impact on this year's elections, and we unpack constitutional roles of members of parliament. Joining me are Josiah Kalala, Executive Director for Chapter 1 Foundation, Honorable Christopher Kang'ombe, a former Member of Parliament for Kamfinsa Constituency in the Ballot province, and a brilliant law student from the Kwame Nkrumah University, Demian Kashweka Bihinda. Let's get into it. Basically, this initiative seeks to strengthen citizens' understanding of the legal reforms process with a focus on the electoral reforms that we have in this year's elections, stemming from the amendment of the Constitution and the amendment of our Electoral Process Act. So this project or initiative rather has been training community members to understand the electoral process and constitutional roles of elected leaders such as MPs, councillors, mayors, or council chairpersons, so that even as they are going to vote, they understand the duties and responsibilities of these elected leaders. So under this initiative, we've trained over, I think, 1,000 community members in Eastern, Southern, Central, and Ballot provinces, just to participate in the electoral process. So as part of this initiative, we are also holding webinars where we'll have different guests that will, explain different issues around the electoral reforms. And for today, our guests are Josiah Kalala, Executive Director, Chapter 1 Foundation, and Demian Kashweka Bihinda from Kwame Nkrumah University, a law student and governance activist. We are also supposed to be joined by former Member of Parliament for Kamfinsa Constituency, Christopher Kang'ombe, who just touched a bit on the roles and responsibilities of, MPs, being a former MP and knowing that he understands, this role very well. So allow me to open it up to our guests, Josiah and Demian, just to introduce themselves before we move on. Josiah, over to you.
Thank you. Would you prefer the camera on or off?
I would prefer that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Josiah Kalala. I work for Chapter 1 Foundation, a civil society organization that promotes human rights, constitutionalism, and the rule of law in Zambia. Thank you, ACA, for organizing this webinar, especially so soon to an election. And I hope to have a very fruitful conversation with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josiah. Demian, over to you. Can you introduce yourself briefly?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chanda. My full name is Demian Kashweka Bihinda. I'm a law student. I'm also a governance activist, passionate about governance, democracy, as well as advancing human rights and constitutionalism. I'm very happy to join you in this discussion. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much to our two guests. And to host this webinar for today, my name is Chanda Chongo, a project officer at Alliance for Community Action. So to begin with, this question is going to the both of you. Yeah, what is one thing you most want a first-time voter to understand before we vote on Thursday? At least one thing that you would like a first-time voter to understand before we vote on Thursday. I'll start with you, Josiah.
Yeah, thank you. I think the one thing I'm tempted to try and sneak in more than one thing. But I think for the conversation, beyond saying that their vote matters, it is that now, for the first time ever, voting for the president means you don't just choose who takes up the office of the president, but you also give the person's party seats in the National Assembly and in your local authority. So yeah, the new changes to the constitution.
All right. Thank you very much, Josiah. I think as we are moving in the program, I'm sure you can add some of the things that you wanted to add in the opening of this program. I'll allow Demian just to briefly share one thing that you want a first-time voter in this year's election to understand before we go to the polls on Thursday.
Okay, one thing that each voter should understand, more especially to the first-time voters, is that they should know that their vote matters. It is each and every vote that counts, that when consolidated adds up to who wins, who becomes the president, who becomes your member of parliament, who becomes your mayor or council chairperson, and your councillors. And maybe the other thing to add on is what Mr. Kalala has clarified, the new constitutional reforms, being aware that as you are voting, more especially in this year's election, you're not just giving your vote to the president, but you're also giving your vote to a PR seat. Yes, that is very important and very crucial, more especially for this year's elections, which have come with peculiar constitutional reforms.
Okay, thank you very much. Interesting views from the both of you. Okay, so moving on to you, Josiah. I mean, stemming from the amendment of our constitution, I think this stems from the Bill 7 and now the Constitution Amendment Act number 13, which brought in a new electoral system that we'll have for the first time in this country. How would you explain the sorry about that. Yeah, as I was saying, as it comes from, the amendment of the Constitution, how would you explain, the mixed member proportional representation system and the changes that have happened when, Zambians are going to the poll this Thursday? Just briefly, in plain language for an ordinary person to understand, how does the new system, the MMPR, change what happens when our country goes to the polls this Thursday?
Thanks, Chanda. So broadly, there are two ways to consider the changes that have happened. Firstly, it's at constitutional level. Constitution change, as you highlighted, bringing about two systems for choosing leaders at parliamentary level and at local government level. And then the second is to give effect to those constitutional changes, the Electoral Process Act was amended. So for the first change, the Constitution was amended to maintain the first past the post system. That means the simple majority, the person who wins a simple majority of votes at constituency and ward level will win the election. Change is that when you vote for your presidential candidate, when you mark the presidential ballot with an X, when you mark the presidential ballot with an X or any other sign to indicate your candidate of choice, you don't only choose president. Based off that vote, seats will be allocated in the National Assembly to different political parties based off the votes the presidential candidates for those parties obtain in the National Assembly and in the local authority. So in Parliament, there'll be 40 new MPs, there are 40 new seats in addition to the 70 new constituency-based seats, and those 40 are allocated based on the proportion of votes a presidential candidate attains. Now, it's not clear from the amendment whether the votes will be apportioned based on the votes at the district level, which is best practice and common around the world, or it will be apportioned based on the national level vote, which is a fear because it enhances the executive influence at local level. But I guess that's a conversation for another day. So that's the main. That's what changes. Now you choose based off your vote, you won't know who those MPs are, councillors are, but based off your vote for the presidential candidate, you will be apportioning or allocating a certain number of seats in the National Assembly of the 40 to the party of the candidate to choose for presidential level, and to a certain number of seats at the council level to the party of the president you allocate, you vote for. So that's the change in simple words, like as I'll put it.
Okay, thank you, Josiah. But before I move to Demian, we've got countries, for instance, South Africa, Zimbabwe. How different is our electoral system, our new electoral system from these countries? If at all there is any difference, what would be your view in terms of comparisons of our system and the system from these other countries?
Definitely different from the system in South Africa. I know South Africa is a parliamentary system, so I'm not sure how their proportional seats are allocated. It's very similar to what pertains in Zimbabwe, I believe, where although I'm not sure if in Zimbabwe the seats are allocated based off the national level vote or the district level votes for the presidential candidate. So it's very similar to what I know or I'm familiar with Zimbabwe. But with South Africa, I would be hesitant to draw any comparisons just yet. I'll have a look as Demian is answering.
Okay, I'll be getting back to you with more questions. I think just from the concerns that we have, observed or got from community members in some of the engagements that we have done. But moving to you, Demian, I want to pick your views from the reserved seats for youths, women and persons with disabilities. What are your views on this? Are they enough, when it comes to representation of youths, representation of women and persons with disabilities?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chand. Maybe before I answer the question, to help a bit on the comparisons of the mixed member proportional system that we are going to use in Zambia and the one that is applied in other jurisdictions like South Africa. For South Africa, they use parliamentary seats. So what they do is they don't vote for the presidential candidates, but rather they vote for a political party. So the political party that is going to have the biggest percentage in an election, that is 50% going up, is the one that is going to have the mandate now to nominate the president. So basically what they further do is that they calculate the total number of members of parliament that they have in the National Assembly that are needed against the percentage that has been obtained by a political party. Then they calculate, they will not say, okay, this is how many member of parliament that, let's say the ANC is supposed to send to parliament. If it's the majority, it means obviously they're going to have more than 50% of MPs and they'll be the one to nominate the president. So for them, they have what I can, for lack of better terms, what I can term as a direct proportional representative system. While for us, we only have a sector reserved for proportional representative system, but the rest we are using the first past the post, and as well as the mixed and the single member majoritarian system, or 50% plus one rather. Then coming back to your question on youths, the people living with disabilities, as well as women, whether the number is enough or not. If you look at Bill 7, it gives us a fixed number, which is basically says 20 women seats and then 15 youth seats, as well as 5 seats reserved for people living with disabilities, bringing a total number of members of parliament to 226 constituency cities, as well as up to 11 presidential 11 cities that can be appointed by the president, that the president will actually appoint. So that's roughly 277 total MPs that we are going to have in parliament, adding also the vice president and the speaker. Now, my concern is that this is written as a fixed allocation, not a flow that grows. If women and youth start winning first past the post constituency cities, then 35 becomes a genuine flow, a baseline on top of organic gains. But if they don't break it into first past the post races, 35 is basically the seeding full stop. And no matter how the population or the demand for representation shifts over time, the law itself doesn't answer which of those will get the party adoption. The party adoption process basically will determine which ones will get. So instead of it being phrased as a fixed number the way it was supposed to be phrased in a manner that it is direct proportional to the population of youths and women and people living with disabilities. My concern is that it is basically restricted, and after it is restricted again, the political party is the one that determines which of those 15 youths, which of those 5 people living with disabilities, and which of those 20 women are going to be selected by the political party to send to parliament.
Thank you very much, Demian. But I think in all this, with what you have explained, do you think that parties are going to use this, or it's going to let parties off the hook when nominating women and youth for the first past the post seats? Does it in some way affect how women and youth are being nominated for the first past the post seats? Picking it from the experience, I think in our adoption processes, as we saw during the adoption processes before the nominations were done.
Indeed, yes, it does. When this is actually the reason why this provision came about. This is the reason why civil society organizations and youth activists have been pushing for this because of the way women, youth, and people living with disabilities have been sidelined. So the existence of a separate PR channel is itself actually quite women and young people are still shut out of competitive constitutional races through financing, through cultural expectation, and through part gatekeeping at adoption. So this provision actually may entrench further this narrative, because parties will actually be thinking that, okay, the youths and women and people living with disabilities, maybe the way they're supposed to get through parliament is just through PR cities, and then it will basically means the first past the post or constituency-based cities will remain for the majority rather, not the minority. And yes, to some extent, this brings about a shift in the narrative that maybe we, the youths, the people with disabilities, and women are going to be sidelined, and their only way through parliament is going to be under PR cities, which are very limited. They're just 40.
Okay, thank you very much, Demian. Getting back to you, Josiah, there has been concern from the community members regards to the party list under this new electoral system. So in other countries, the party list is submitted before the election is done. But in our case, people can only know about the party list that political parties will submit to the Electoral Commission of Zambia after the elections are done. What are your views on this? Does it create a challenge in terms of transparency in this electoral process?
It does. So I just did a quick check for the countries you asked about. So South Africa operates under a completely proportional electoral system, as Damian has highlighted, and Zimbabwe has a similar system to Zambia. So, onto your question about the transparency of the process. Elections are about citizens choosing who they want to represent them. And that requires a level of transparency in terms of who the candidates are going to be. So if a system if a system is opaque and you only know who represents you or who the party proposes to represent you after the elections, it undermines the essence of your vote translating into leadership that you want. Secondly, there's a time frame in the new law that that prescribes how or the period for parties to submit names and fill in the proportional seats. So this delay means if party lists are subjected to any sort of constitutional challenge, it might affect that timeline. So overall, Chapter 1 did not support the proposal for submitting the list after the president-elect has been sworn in. And we await to see how that will be implemented in effect. We already know that we don't have any political party legislation in Zambia that governs internal party democracy. But for instance, the Electoral Process Act envisages that these seats or these people who take up these seats would have been democratically chosen by the political parties. We've heard, for instance, that some candidates were called and asked to withdraw and promised to be allocated these seats. So it already undermines the democracy around how these seats should be filled, but also undermines how a citizen's vote should translate into leadership that represents them.
All right. Thank you very much, Josiah. Demian, your views on this. So our other guest, Christopher Kang'ombe, who is the former member of parliament for Kamfinsa constituency, will be joining us very shortly. Demian, maybe I can pick your views from this, just briefly.
Okay, just like Mr. Josiah has put it, in Zambia we don't have a legislation that guides political parties. So the internal democracy of political parties in Zambia is basically very prone because we don't have mechanisms that actually guides internal democracy processes within the political parties. And this goes back to the point that I actually stressed earlier on that we don't know how these people are going to be picked by their respective political parties. That is because we don't have guidance, we don't have legislation. So it is prone to any sort of abuse. It can be under it can be corruption, it can be nepotism, patronage, or anything, because we don't have a mechanism that guides to that effect.
All right. Thank you very much, Demian. The audience, if you have got any question, you can just raise your hand. Then our guests may take some of the questions as we move with the program. So if you're just joining us, this is our first edition or our first segment of a series of webinars that we'll be hosting under the Legal Reforms Initiative, which seeks to strengthen citizen understanding of, illegal reforms, the current legal reforms that we have in our country, with a focus, of course, on the electoral reforms that would definitely have an impact to our elections this year. Moving on to the next set of questions, going back to how we have done our law reforms. Josiah, do you think that citizens at large are satisfied with the way reforms are being carried out in the country? I mean, focusing on the Constitution amendment process and also the Electoral process Act amendment, and also touching a bit on the delimitation process. Do you think that citizens are satisfied with how these reforms have been carried out?
It's a tricky one. Whenever I reflect on this question, I tend to go on a rant. I think for the most part, we as civil society, as government, have a lot to do, get citizens interested in law reforms, and to understand them. In terms of satisfaction, it's a mixed bag. I think most people have viewed the reforms undertaken by the UPND from either the lens of this is a party we support. They've been elected to govern, and these reforms are part of their governance agenda. And then others are a bit more critical of the reforms in terms of the substance. So I can't speak broadly for the entire populace, but I can speak for Chapter 1 as an organization, and maybe also as an individual. We haven't been satisfied by the reforms. They haven't structurally changed systems and practices in a way that would enhance Zambia's democracy or enhance good governance. And I'll give some examples. with the constitutional amendment, civil society, Chapter 1 Inclusive, has long been calling for comprehensive constitutional reforms. And this is in recognition of the fact that Zambia's challenges are structural, and we cannot address, for instance, the gaps in without addressing the other barriers to representation within our legal system. We cannot adequately address issues of representation at the local level without firstly rethinking our devolution system. And so I'm not surprised that the Attorney General later announced that there'll be comprehensive constitutional reforms. We're not surprised that some civil society organizations that 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 supported the last reforms are saying, no, we need constitutional reforms after this. So it has left, I mean, the last process has left a sour taste in my mouth because these processes can also be manipulated. With the delimitation exercise, I think there are also questions there about who is empowered to determine the number of constituencies. And we got a lot of flack, or I got a lot of flack after I asked if ECZ has power to create constituencies. And I think even from this process, it's clear it doesn't. It's National Assembly that amended the constitution and created 70 new constituencies. ECZ's role is simply to identify where these constituencies will be. Now, do we want a governance system where an institution can determine its own size? So can National Assembly come again in August, September and say, no, we want to have an additional 50 new constituencies, or we want to 100 new constituencies? So for us, there's a deeper question there about who determines the size of the National Assembly. And that wasn't resolved in this process. And to even take a step back, we know in 2019, 2020, when ECZ did a delimitation exercise where they reviewed the number of constituencies and wards, the then Minister of Justice told the National Assembly that the Electoral Commission had recommended, I believe that was 90 new constituencies. And the question then we can ask is, where did Parliament get the 70 that they enacted last year? So there's a disparity there. And delimitation is a constitutional exercise where you look at constitutional factors to ensure that there's a semblance of equality of the vote. But in our case, we've used delimitation as a tool for administrative expedient. So we're talking about CDF, so we need new constituencies. When delimitation falls under the part of the Constitution that deals with elections, delimitation relates to the boundaries of constituencies and wards, electoral units, not administrative units for development purposes. And I think, so I could go on, like I said, this topic often leads me into a rant, but so that Demian and the other panelists can also respond, I will end here. And then maybe ACA can organize another webinar for another rant.
Yes, definitely more webinars are coming. I know it's a small time to have such a discussion, and definitely we need, I mean, a bigger platform and more time to to unpack a lot of things around our reforms. But coming to you, Demian, I know you interact with quite a number of youths and students. What has been the reaction from the students or from the youths in terms of how these law reforms have been carried out? Because I remember, I think the last time SCA Chapter 1 Foundation and I think JCTR, then what Mulungushi University, concerning by then it was the constitutional amendment. It was Bill 7 then. Looking at the interaction from the students and the former member of parliament for Kawi, there was a bit of tension because most of the students couldn't agree with, what was contained in the bill and how the whole process was being carried out. But from your perspective and from the interactions that you had, Demian, how has been the reaction in terms of how these law reforms are being carried out?
Okay, thank you so much. I think, in short, from the reaction of most of the youths that have engaged over the topic, away from the topic, it seems actually a good number of youths, I would say 70 to 80% actually, don't understand the mixed member proportional system and how the PR cities are going to be distributed. Those who've got an idea of it, when you try to explain to them, mostly they'll just brush it off with no, it is basically for cadres, for part affiliates, for people who are connected within the party. So it goes back to the lack of a comprehensive political party legislation that gives us mechanism that guides to who is picked and how do they qualify and stuff like that. So a lot of youths are basically complacent, I would say, about it. They just think it is for people who are who have connections in the party, who are well-known, big names within different political parties. It really shows how, for me, I think it is good, but the timing at which these reforms were brought was not very good. So this has actually also affected sensitization among the youths. And if there is lack of sensitization, it means people don't have knowledge about it. And since people don't have knowledge about it, it basically means that it is prone to be manipulated by political parties. So the legislation itself is very good, but the timing in which it was brought in was not very good. And then I feel like there was not much enough sensitization done about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Demian. Josiah, I can see your hand.
Yes.
So we've just
I
been.
wanted to
Yes, please go ahead.
I wanted to ask Damian, because he said the legislation was very good, so I wanted to understand what he meant and possibly push back. But yeah, I just wanted to understand what he meant.
Okay, Demian, are you able to respond under a minute?
Okay, yeah. So I use the term very good, not necessarily to mean as the legislation itself was very good, but the idea of bringing the legislation was very good, but the timing was bad. And since the timing was very bad, the process basically entails the outcome. Since the timing was very bad, it basically means it lacked enough time to be interrogated by we the youths ourselves. And if it had enough time to be interrogated, I believe we're going to have the best outcome of the legislation. But in the broader sense, the legislation itself is good. But then because it lacked enough time to be interrogated, I think it has failed to achieve what it wanted to achieve.
Okay, thank you very much, Demian. So for those that are just joining us, this is a webinar under the Legal Reforms Initiative. This is our first episode or edition under a series of webinars that we'll be hosting that seek to strengthen citizen understanding of the legal reforms the processes with a focus on the legal reforms around our electoral process and the impact that it has in this year's election. So we've been joined by another guest who is Christopher Kang'ombe, former Member of Parliament for Kamfinsa constituency. Sir, you are welcome. I would like you to briefly introduce yourself. I think a number of people know you as a former Member of Parliament or knew you as a Member of Parliament, but just a brief introduction before we move to the next segment of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you able to pick my voice?
Yes, very loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Sincere apology, guys, for joining you late. The host was supposed to send a reminder to me during the day. I got overwhelmed with schoolwork for my daughter. I've been trying to keep myself busy with a couple of commitments at home and a bit of consultancy work that I'm doing at the moment. So sincere apology for not joining you on time. This is Christopher Kang'ombe. As I've been introduced, I had the rare honor to serve the people of Kamfinsa constituency and the wider majority in the last 5 years as MP. Prior to that, I was also an elected mayor for the city of Kitwe, and I had 10 years working with people at the lowest level, which is at councillor level. So I am excited, guys, to join you as you discuss the legal reforms. I don't know what I've missed. Is this the part where I provide my input? But I've just introduced myself. I'll be guided on what role I'm supposed to play, and then I can provide my input very quickly. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Sir Christopher Kang'ombe. So the discussion has been around the legal reforms with the focus on the Electoral Process Act amendment, where we now have the mixed member representation system and how it will have an impact in this year's election. But coming to you, Christopher Kang'ombe, you have been, in these elective positions. I think now it's should be 3 out of 4, councillor level, mayor level, MP, and now what's remaining is the presidential level, which we believe will be coming very soon. So, coming to you. Just to understand, because this whole conversation is tied to, MPs, councillors, and the new electoral system now has got, the first past the post and the reserved seats. But for, especially for first-time voters who'll be voting on Thursday, help us understand, the role of an MP. What should an MP do according to the constitution, and what should first-time voters look out for in a candidate who is standing at parliamentary level?
Well, thank you very much. We'll need, like I always say when I'm invited for these sessions, we'll need more time to break down the issue at hand, but I'll try and simplify it for those that have joined us for this session. So previously, the role of a member of parliament was limited to making laws in parliament. You get elected, you go into parliament. The first order of business is obviously to elect the speaker. Once you elect the speaker then takes over to guide the meetings. And then you have MPs being put in committees, committee on health, committee on education, committee on energy. It was basically work in parliament. The role of a parliamentarian was to basically make laws in parliament and approve the national budget. Now, with the passage of time, we've seen a couple of amendments being done to the Constitution of Zambia. And I'll start with the 2016 amendments, because the 2016 amendments define now the role of an MP. If you go to the regulations, it will tell you budgeting, lawmaking, but also some level of oversight on the executive, because the executive, as many of you might be aware, we have the three arms of government: the legislature, the executive, and obviously the judiciary. So the role of a parliamentarian has evolved over the years. I'm aware right now for young people that are contesting that it's even more challenging to get elected as a young person, because your competitor wants to help with funerals, your competitor wants to provide school bags for those that can't afford, if that candidate has got a bit of cash. Your competitor in an election now wants to do so many things that are not prescribed anywhere. But for a first-time voter, what are they looking for in a member of parliament? Ideally, they should be looking for a guy who understands what are the needs of people in a country, not just in the constituency. Because when you get elected into parliament, you are not just a member of parliament for Kamfinsa. You are representing Kamfinsa because that's your platform into the main house. So what should young people be looking for? What should be the first-time voters be looking for? Number one, I think they should be able to look for a member of parliament who will be able to really understand that parliament is where you make the laws. Someone who should understand when they are campaigning. I don't know how many of you have attended these campaign meetings for candidates. Very few candidates talk about the laws that they will be able to discharge in parliament. Majority are saying, elect me as MP, I'll make sure this road is done. Elect me as an MP, I'll make sure that you get your CDF. But technically speaking, the MP should be this young person or elderly person, lady or male or female, who then be able to go into parliament, interrogate the national budget, because apart from making the laws, you want an MP who will be able to go through the national budget and be able to say, look, wait a minute. Last year, 1 billion kwacha was allocated for healthcare. This year, you've reduced the allocation. Can you push in more money so that we actually do beyond 1 billion kwacha? So the first thing that I would want voters to interrogate, I know we are now 2 days away from voting, so it may be late, but I would really want young people to look out for a member of parliament who understands the role of making the laws, but also the type of MP who understands that if you don't argue for more money in the national budget, you won't get your roads, you won't get your health facilities worked on, you won't get your teachers recruited. So you need a guy who can interrogate some of those responsibilities. And like I said, if I had the whole day, I would have easily broken down what is in the law and what is provided for and what I would expect young people to look out for. So I think pretty much young people need to look for the sharp guys. To be sharp doesn't mean you should speak very fluent English. It will be an added advantage to speak good English in parliament, but you must be the guy who understands that, oh, here's a law that has been crafted, here's a bill that has been brought to parliament. What do I look out for in making the law? Secondly, what should be in the national budget? Should we put more money in healthcare or should we put more money in infrastructure? So you need that type of person to present themselves as candidates for parliament.
Thank you very much, Christopher, for that, for that breakdown. Getting back to, and this question is, I'm throwing this question to other guests, looking at, the MPs that will be, voted for in the first past the post system, and also the nominated MPs. Do you think that there will be a challenge in terms of how these MPs will discharge their duties, especially when it comes to, serving the interests of the citizens?
Should I go first?
I'll start with you, Christopher, then Josiah and Demian.
Yeah, so you again, we've had, I think, four or five constitution making processes. We had the Vunga Commission, where people said a lot of things. We want this in the law, we want this in the law. We had the Mwanakatwe Commission, 1996. We had the Mungomba Commission in 2003, 2004. We had the National Constitutional Conference, and then we had, I think, the NDF in 2019, and more recently, the recent amendments. Now, what has been common for many years has been this outcry that not every young person gets the opportunity to go into parliament. Not every woman has got the financial muscle to go out there and compete with the male to parliament. So what has happened with the law? The law now
Are you still with us, Christopher?
Hello? Are you getting me?
Yes, we can get you now. We had lost you.
Yeah, so we have two systems now. Previously, what we had was anyone who wants to go to parliament, you have to get elected. If you're not elected, you must pray that you are among the 8 who are nominated by the one who becomes president. That is what you call the elective way of going into parliament. But now what has happened is that there are 40 seats that have been created for those who don't want to compete in an election, or for those that will get lucky, because it's basically now up to the political party that fields a presidential candidate, or it's up to the presidential candidate who's independent, who gets a certain number of votes. So let's say, for argument's sake, Christopher is a presidential candidate. Depending on my presidential votes, I should then be able to get a share of the 60 seats. I'm calling them free seats, okay? I'm calling them free seats. In Bemba, I would say, ama seats aya bambale, meaning those seats that you don't need to contest. You have to wait for the president who likes your ideas, because if you are a woman and the constitution says there shall be 20 seats for women, those 20 seats will depend on the presidential vote that someone gets. So your question is very clear. How does this affect representation? How does this affect the delivery of work in parliament? I think that whether you like it or not, the proportional representation seats will still have to come from a presidential candidate. Young people won't miraculously find their way into parliament because the constitution says 15 seats are for young people. Women won't find their way into parliament miraculously because they want to be in parliament. It will have to be, first of all, the election is done, which is on the 13th. We wait for the presidential vote to be announced. Depending on the votes that you got as a presidential candidate, you then get a share, a proportion. That is where proportional representation comes in, meaning a share of the 20 seats for women, a share of the 15 seats for the youth, and a share of the 5 seats for the differently abled. Is it practical? Will these individuals be effective in parliament? Again, we may look at the objective of these provisions. What is the objective? The objective is to provide a voice for those who may not ordinarily be able to go through the elective route. In my opinion, because I know others have to submit their comments, in my opinion, it's an amazing opportunity, but the challenge still depends on who the president picks to go into parliament. Do they pick people who understand their role in parliament, or do they pick people simply based on patronage? I think that is the most important issue that we must interrogate. But for me, this is an amazing provision. It has been suggested, I think, from the Mungomba Commission. Mixed member was a proposal. When Bill 10 came into parliament in 2019, it was one of the proposals that the previous government suggested. Even the current government also brought it up. So the question basically is, what will be the criteria for the president and the political party to look at when picking the 20 women, 15 youth, and the differently abled? I think that is where I'll end for now to allow others to run their comments.
All right, thank you very much, Christopher. You raised some critical issues there. Please, if you have any question, you can type in the chat, and our guests will respond to the questions. Josiah, over to you.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question? I lost my train of thought.
Yes. So looking at the first past the post system and the new mixed member proportional representation system. So we've got MPs under the first past the post and MPs under the proportional representation. Do you think that there will be what impact will be there in terms of representation? Would the loyalty be, in the interest of the citizens, or the loyalty will be to the political parties?
Thanks. Yes. Yeah. No, I don't think it changes where loyalties lie. In my view, people are still, or members of parliament are very beholden to their political parties. And I'll give you an example. Under our constitution, you can lose your seat if you are expelled from a political party. The only time you stay within National Assembly is if the party is dissolved or something like that. Now, if the party constitution says you must wear green and you wear blue, you can be expelled from the party. If you challenge it in court, the court will simply look at whether due process has been complied with, whether the party constitution has been complied with. They don't look at the merits of your expulsion. The constitution doesn't provide any protection for the merits of expulsion. So people tend to be beholden to where their source of power comes from. And if you look at our constitution, and various analysis that have been done around our constitution. And this is historical. From the colonial times, we had very centralized system of governance. We changed to our independence. We got our independence. There was a level of decentralization. Then we moved to a one-party state. Power was re-centralized. And since then, our constitutional debates have been around deconcentrating power from the executive. Almost every stream of power comes from the executive. And that's why you can hear during these campaigns, candidates saying, it's me, it's the president that matters, MPs don't matter. It's the president that has done this and that. Because power in this country, be it judicial power, be it legislative power, is beholden to the executive. And there's a whole topic of discussion around executives around Africa, around the world, and how they seize power from the other state organs. On representation, so these proportional seats, and this was one of the critique. If you look at the constitution, the way MPs lose their seats is within the constitution. But with these proportional seats, it's not in the constitution. So it's not part of the constitutional framework for removing MPs. So there's a question mark there. Can a party simply replace one candidate with another? It's not going to be in the constitution. So that means, at least in our view, there's an impetus for being beholden to where your power comes from. Then the issue further on representation is for the proportional seats. Whilst MPs, like Honorable Kang'ombe mentioned, MPs represent their constituencies. There's a constituency that sent them there to represent them. These are picked for fitting or filling a certain criteria, but they're there to represent the president, the person that sends them there. And maybe just to clarify, I think the way the Amendment and the Electoral Process Act are framed, an independent president does not get assigned seats. It's only political parties. So if an independent president gets a percentage, they essentially forfeit. So those are some of the issues that needed clarification early on. So they won't necessarily represent the interest of women, although that would be ideal. But it's not It's not women that sent them there. It's not youth that sent them there. It's not persons with disabilities that sent them there. It's the political party. So they're beholden to where their power comes from. We haven't done enough in our constitutional conversations to make MPs more accountable to constituents. And this is one of the things, it's a personal view, but one of the areas which we need to discuss as part of constitutional reforms. Firstly, how MPs can be held accountable. That strengthens the bond between an MP and their constituents. Even for these proportional seats, how can we ensure they're accountable to the demography that they're supposed to represent? There's a thing also of tokenistic representation, where you have these 40 seats, but they're not effectual in terms of what the representation is supposed to achieve. And that's a deeper conversation. So in my view, I do not think that the new system will translate into better representation. I think that can only be achieved with further conversations and dialogue around what the Constitution should achieve, and what it can't, and what other pieces of legislation we need to enact to sort of regulate the space. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josiah. So for those that are just joining us, this is our first edition of a series of webinars around the legal reforms initiative. We are focusing on our current, law reforms with a focus on the Electoral Process Act, and also the Constitutional Amendment Act number 13 that have had a huge impact in this year's election.
Can I chip in?
Demian, I'll move to you now. Briefly, what's your view on the representation of citizens between the MPs that will go to parliament through the PR seats and those that will go through to parliament through the first past the post system?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chanda. It goes back to what I have always emphasized on the issue of timing, when the time we're coming up with this legislation. I feel like as stakeholders, we're not given enough time to interrogate the legislation and coming up with a different scope of thoughts that we're going to help in shaping up our democracy, as well as making sure that the people that we elect are actually accountable to us as voters, not political parties or their party presidents. Without having that, it has actually, what I'm seeing in my own view is that it is actually going to entrench political party influence as well as control in parliament. We are talking about 40 seats that are going to come from different political parties. And then the legislation of the Electoral Process Amendment Act is very clear on how these PR cities nominated MPs are going to lose their seat. It doesn't even specify a process, a process of the law for them. It just states that if a political party wants, they can basically replace a member of parliament who has been nominated under PR. So that basically means that the political party at the end of the day has got control over these MPs that are going to be sent to parliament. Like Josiah had put it, they're not going to represent the women, they're not going to represent the youth, they're not going to represent our friends who are differently abled, but they're basically going to represent the interest of the political parties. And it all goes back to us when we lost that opportunity when this legislation was brought to us. I feel like it was supposed to be subject to interrogation and different scopes, so that we're going to help it achieve what it's supposed to achieve, which is basically us, the voters, having the powers to hold the MPs that we send to Parliament, to hold them accountable. When it comes to those who are elected and first past the post, the narrative basically is not going to change. It's going to be the same as it has always been. Actually, for them, it is better than for those who are under PR, because for them, at least there is a chance of the due process of the law that is supposed to be interrogated by the courts, as seen in the case of Shimba Kambuli, then when he was expelled by the Patriotic Front, on how at some point he actually held on to that seat despite not being in good books with the PF then. But for PR cities, they're very vulnerable and very prone, because a president can just wake up and recall you. If let's say I've been nominated to represent the youth in Parliament, and the president feels like recalling me, can just wake up the other day and have me recalled from Parliament. So it basically means that my loyalty shifts to the president who actually appointed me, not the people who actually gave the vote. Because what we need to understand in this year's election is that a vote that is going to be given to the president is not only in the sense of giving that president, but it is also in the sense that they should also appoint a youth, a woman, and a person living with disability. So in my view, I feel like our legislation is not adequate enough to hold our representatives accountable, especially as the voters. We have not done much. This legislation, when it came to us, there was not much interrogation done on it to ensure that it is actually achieves what it was supposed to achieve. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Demian. So before we get to the questions, I'll just run it back in a bit just to pick Honorable Kang'ombe's views on this. This is a question that had gone to Josiah and Demian. So you being a lawmaker then, when we had most of these reforms in place, do you think that citizens have been satisfied with how our law reforms have been carried out in terms of participation and just input from the citizens? Do you think that they've been satisfied with how these reforms have been carried out, starting from the Constitutional Amendment, the Electoral Process Act? Do you think that citizens have been satisfied?
Well, first of all, if we have to look at the Electoral Process Act and the Constitution, then we are narrowing the conversation on how it should be. So this is what I proposed to the clerk of the National Assembly. One of the things I've noticed, look at how we are interacting today. We are not physically interacting. We are interacting through some online platform. Technology has allowed us to have this discussion right now. So one of the things I proposed was that we need to incorporate digital platforms in the way in which Parliament functions, because we have to look at it holistically, because it is at Parliament that laws are made, it is at Parliament that budgets are approved, it is at Parliament that questions from citizens are asked through motions by MPs. It is through Parliament that people interrogate certain things through their members of Parliament. So my proposal, and I want us to look at it holistically, and I'll answer your question, is that we need to allow people in Chililabombwe, for instance. Chililabombwe is on the border with Congo at Kasumbalesa. There are people who want to filter their information into Parliament. They may not get it through their MP, because obviously, like you've rightly observed by my two other colleagues, in Parliament, there's a whipping system. What a whipping system is that before you go into Parliament at 14:30, political parties with their party whips. So a party whip is like your prefect. So a party whip is like your party prefect. So each political party has got a whip, like a leader in Parliament. The guy who says, guys, there are 3 topics today in Parliament. we are towing this line. Okay, so your prefect will call you in a corner. 14 hours, they call you in a corner. They tell you, go and vote in this direction. 3/4 of those decisions you see in parliament are because of the bad whipping system. Okay, so we have prefects for MPs in parliament. Okay, and that has been the practice. It's the practice in the UK because we adopted the Commonwealth practice. So I made a proposal that, look, because of the bad whipping system, can we introduce digital platforms where if a citizen in Mushindamo in Northwestern Province wants to get into parliament and there's a bill coming to parliament, there must be either a chat box. Technology should allow someone to submit their concerns in real time on an online platform so that by the time parliamentarians are being whipped, there's already input from members of the public on a specific topic. And that brings me to the issue of the Electoral Process Act and obviously what you call the constitution making process. For many years, it has always been the president of the country commissions a team, okay, through the commission, through an inquiry. Okay, so there's a law. I think if we have lawyers here, you are aware that there's what is called the Inquiries Act. President Sata used to use the Inquiries Act. President Mwanawasa used the Inquiries Act, where you inquire from the public to say, there are these things for us in government we would want changed. What are the views of the people? Those are called terms of references, okay? So terms of reference are the 10 things that the government wants to change in the law. Now, the problem arises because there has never been sufficient time, okay? If you start an amendment to the Constitution, say 5 years before an election, yeah, maybe others will say there's enough time, but I've never seen a 5-year period given to citizens to provide their input. And this is why, for me, the starting point is that we need to modernize parliament. The way, guys, we are interacting today is an opportunity that should allow us to use technology to give citizens the platform. Not everyone will walk into Mlungushi to go and appear before a committee that has been appointed by the president. There are citizens who want to make their views in real time, submit what they think is good about the law, remove what is bad, because there can never be a law which is 100% bad. At the same time, there can never be a law which is 100% good. So you must give citizens the opportunity to be able to provide their input. Have we given citizens the right amount of time? And what is the right amount of time? Is the right amount of time 2 years? Is the right amount of time 6 years? Is the right amount of time for citizens to make their views known 24 months? The law, again, is very silent on the amount of time that should be accorded to citizens. And in my view, what we are discussing now is already law. What we should be discussing now is we have women, the youth, and the disabled that will be going into parliament. We have those that will be elected in the constituencies, Kamfinsa, Chimwemwe, Kabwata, those who will be elected from the constituents. The question we should be asking ourselves now is that with the progress that we've made and the shortcomings that have been picked, how do we then initiate a citizen submission to parliament? You know, parliament allows for citizens to petition parliament. Citizens, through the Alliance for Community Action, we can prepare a petition to parliament to say there's ambiguity. This statement is ambiguous. There's no clarity on how the 40 proportional seats will be, how the people that will be picked will be held accountable. You can do a petition to parliament, provided you couch it with clarity, and then you identify. I don't know which citizens out of our group today will be ready to go and take a petition to parliament to say, we want Section 5 to be clear, we want Clause 6 to be clear, we want Article 15 to be clear. That can be done. The point I'm making is that from this discussion, there are obviously issues we've picked. how do we get those issues into parliament? Can we find an avenue? And the laws of Zambia provide for citizens to petition parliament. And I hope that someone will pick it up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Christopher Kang'ombe, for that elaborate explanation and your views on how these law reforms have been done. I'll read some of the questions in the chat. So this one is from Molenga. She's asking, since we don't have legislation that guides the governance of internal systems of political parties, how will civil society hold political parties accountable for the manner in which the PR lists will be developed? This is a question I think to other guests. So any of you can pick it up. Then the other question from Kathy, she asks, with elections just 2 days away, what are the key things voters need to know about their rights and the law that protects their vote? Then the other question, this one is going specifically to Honorable Kang'ombe. She asks, I'm seeking some clarity or guidance on how by-elections apply to political parties. The Constitution Amendment defines a by-election only in relation to independent MPs, mayors, councils, chairpersons, and councillors. Does this mean that when a party-affiliated MP or councillor vacates their seat, the process is handled differently? So we can begin with the first question, guest.
I think I'll go for the first question.
Yes, please, Demian, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, very loud and clear.
Okay, thank you so much. So the question reads, since we don't have a legislation that guides the governance of internal systems of political parties, how will the civil society hold political parties accountable for the manner in which the PRCTs lists will be developed? Yeah, so the guiding principle here is going to be the Electoral Process Amendment Act. That is going to be our guiding principle. It has basically given us procedure on how the PRCTs are going to be submitted. They are going to be submitted after the election, and I think that is in section starting from section 30 of the Electoral Process Amendment Act of 2026. But then the question further asks accountability, especially from civil society organization. I think this is where now the most contentious part of the question arises, and it goes back to our discussion that there wasn't much time given to us to interrogate this legislation when they were put to us, and therefore we don't have mechanisms that actually guides us and that can provide data to civil society organization to hold these political parties accountable. We don't have, like Josiah had put it, we don't have a political party legislation that guides the conducts of political parties, how they are going to appoint these PRCTs. Yes, to that effect. It is a very serious question, because ideally it explores the importance of these PRCTs, and if we lose it from this juncture, actually it basically beats the importance of these PRCTs. They just become regulations or laws that are just in paper, but that don't translate into real objective that they're supposed to achieve. And it makes us question the way we come up with our legislations. The top to down kind of legislation that has been happening in Zambia has, I think, affected us in most cases. I feel like we have been adopting the down to top kind of approach when we're coming up with the legislation, and it has basically, this question basically shows us that if we are not careful, the objective of PRR cities are not going to be achieved like we have discussed here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What question was directed to me? Pick up my question. I've even forgotten.
Okay. Yes. So Kathy is asking. So this is she just wants clarification or guidance on how by-elections apply to political parties. So she says the constitutional amendment defines a by-election only in relation to independent MPs.
No, not at all. Can I clarify?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, so there's no by-election for one category of stakeholder. A by-election is a by-election, okay? Whether you are elected on a political party ticket or as an independent candidate, for as long as there's death involved, the sitting MP dies, definitely there will be a by-election. If for instance the courts of law find you guilty of one of the offenses under a written law in Zambia, you are found guilty of murder, you are found guilty of a criminal offense, the seat becomes vacant. And if you read the constitution further, the old one and the current one, the one whose seat has been declared vacant has a right to go to court. You go to court if the court proves that, if the court of law hears your appeal and there's justification for your appeal, yeah, it's a different scenario. But just to respond to Kathy, there's no provision which favors one type of stakeholder in the electoral process of Zambia, in the governance systems of Zambia. A by-election is a by-election. You either die or you are found guilty. There shall be a by-election. Just another clarification I wanted to make. If person A is an MP and they belong to a political party, and the political party says you are not abiding by the political party rules, we are expelling you from the political party, that political party will write to parliament to say, look, person A is no longer our member and we are the ones who sponsored that person. So that person, can you declare that seat vacant? Even if the speaker declared that seat vacant, that person A can go to court, and if the court finds that the political party acted erroneously, they did not follow the procedure, that person will become an independent member of parliament automatically, meaning they will cease to belong to that political party because there's already bad blood. The party and the individual are no longer seeing eye to eye. So what will happen now is that those two stakeholders, the person who was elected on a political party ticket and the party, will cease to have that formal relationship in parliament. Person A will then become an independent member of parliament without an election. I just wanted to make that clarification.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Christopher Kang'ombe, for that clarity. Kathy, I've seen she's doing a thumbs up. Sure, it's very loud and clear. Josiah, as we wind up, you respond to the question.
Yeah, on what civil society can do to hold political parties accountable. I think because we've got limited pathways, the first is accountability to the Constitution. If the constitutional criteria is not complied with, you can seek redress through the Constitutional Court. Also, accountability of the Electoral Commission to the Electoral Process Act and the Constitution. If ECZ doesn't comply with the Constitution or with the Electoral Process Act, again, you can challenge that decision. And I just want to clarify something, and I'll read Article 72(2)(e) of the Constitution. So Article 72 provides for the vacation of office of members of parliament and dissolution of a political party. So 72.2 says the office of member of parliament becomes vacant if the member E is expelled from the political party which sponsored the member for election to the National Assembly. So if you're expelled from the political party, your seat becomes vacant according to the Constitution. I think the only incidents where the candidate becomes an independent member of parliament is if the party is dissolved. But if you're expelled, the seat becomes vacant and there's a by-election. Let me just see one of the other questions. The question on the 2 days, what are the key things voters need to know about their rights and the laws that protect their vote? I think the most important thing is your vote matters. Your voice matters in determining who governs you. So you shouldn't take that for granted. And your participation in governance goes beyond just the polling day. You choose an elected leader, you're supposed to interact with your elected leader throughout their term in office because they represent you. You don't give them a blank check. They have to interact with you and you have to interact with them. Then, in terms of laws that protect your rights, the Constitution is the starting point. The Constitution protects your rights. It provides a framework for what elections are supposed to achieve and how they're supposed to be conducted. So that's the first thing. Read your Constitution, understand it, read your laws and understand them. And I'd like to echo something Honorable Kang'ombe mentioned about modernizing Parliament. You know, shortly before, Chapter 1 has helped other civil society and individuals draft petitions to the National Assembly for legislation that have been accepted. Even when the conversations for Bill 7 were starting, we drafted a petition to the National Assembly saying National Assembly should enact a law that prescribes participation or public consultations before a law is presented to Parliament. And we got a letter back saying we had not exhausted all the administrative channels before filing our petition. Now, we've done these petitions for other people and other organizations before. We were quite shocked at that, but it is what it is. I think there is need to modernize our National Assembly and Parliament, and even beyond that, we need to ensure that the laws because the executive drafts most of our laws. The laws that are drafted by the executive have sufficient public consultation before they are presented to the National Assembly. Because it's quite for example, this year 77 bills were presented to the National Assembly. But in some of those instances, I remember a few times I went to the National Assembly to make submissions, but the committee was so overwhelmed, I didn't even get to make a submission. So I think there is need to rethink the process of how laws are drafted, presented to Parliament, and finally enacted, so that we have not just public participation, it has to be meaningful public participation. Members of Parliament need to be given an opportunity to interrogate what the proposals mean, but also what citizens' views are. And for a constitution, the starting point isn't just receiving these views. There has to be a strong or a very comprehensive civic awareness or civic education campaign so that citizens understand what is a constitution, what can it do, what can't it do, so that as they make their submissions, they're informed about what their submissions will translate into. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Josiah. So as we wind up, there's a last question from Lusekelo Kamfwa. It's going to Josiah and Honorable Kang'ombe. So he says, given that Section 36H of the Electoral Process Amendment Act of 2026 gives a party unfettered power to recall the MPs they have chosen under the PR, do you think efforts should be made to amend that provision to only limit recalling to crossing the floor, so that MPs under the PR Act are more objectively. So as we answer these questions, I think we can even wind up with your last remarks, starting from Demian, Honorable Christopher Kang'ombe, and Josiah. But for now, Josiah and Honorable Kang'ombe can answer this question under a minute.
Well, under a minute before Josiah comes in, recalling, the concept of recalling ideally should only apply to, I know we don't have a recall system in Zambia, even for elected MPs. We don't have a system where if an MP is elected and they misbehave, there's no provision for citizens who are registered voters to file some document before either the court or parliament to recall their member of parliament. There's no recall system unless I've missed out that provision. So under the current laws of Zambia, there's no recall system on elected members of parliament. On that section 35, I'll need to read it in full context to understand what was attempted to be achieved through that provision. But in my view, if the seat is a proportional seat, you've been picked by a political party that had a certain number of presidential votes, and you've been seen to be the right person to represent a certain group of stakeholders, the women folk, for instance. There must be clarity on on circumstances that should warrant your nomination to the proportional seat to be withdrawn. These are things I want to indicate, because today we don't have enough time. There's need for literally everyone who's on this platform today to ask themselves, when we have this nice discussion today, what happens to the consensus we are building? What happens to this wealth of knowledge that we are sharing? Someone has to draft a document that picks out the key issues that have been highlighted. And for me, this issue should be one of them. How do we ensure that a young person who's been picked into parliament on the 15 seats under proportional representation is allowed to exercise their independent mind in parliament? There must be a provision which protects them, but there must also be a provision which ensures that they don't misbehave when they're in parliament. I think that would be my view.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kang'ombe. Josiah, over to you.
Yeah, I agree with Honorable Kang'ombe. I think there has to be some greater link between the constituents that you're supposed to represent and the member of parliament. And it is something that probably needs some reflection on. Like I said earlier, for constitutional issues and some of these key legislative measures, we cannot and should not look at them in isolation. We need to look at the entirety of the legal framework that prescribes the role of MPs, the link between MPs and their constituents, so that we protect MPs from targeting. I mean, MPs are chosen because they're popular, because they're supported and wanted by specific constituents. And I think one of the most sad things that's happened over the years with declining democracy around the world is the link between elected officials and their constituents has weakened and has been replaced with a stronger link between party or sectarian interests and elected officials. We can see it in the US, where the current president has a hold on the party and who takes up office, and sometimes the detriment of constituents. I think we need to rethink this link. I hope that answers Lucifalo's question. Then we can, I'll let Demian share his final thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much. So in winding up, I'll start with you, Demian. what are your last remarks, especially on, our current law reform process and going into this election? What would be your final remarks?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chanda. My final remarks on the current law process is that since our legislation is not very adequate enough to cover a lot of things that we have actually identified here, it has shown a lot of salient issues that this legislation has left gaps and loopholes that it has left, or that it has, is that we as citizens, the civil society organizations, youths, and activists, that we must be strong enough to hold our representatives accountable by using the provided means that are in our legislation and the Constitution. Yes, and to ensure that we are very much actively involved, because already we have a legislation that is limited and not very adequate enough. So this calls for our active participation going forward. And then when we are presented with an opportunity to amend our Constitution again, I feel like the narrative of coming up with legislation that come from the top dictates the terms of references. I think we should do away with that one. We should propose a mechanism where we have terms of references coming from from the citizens themselves. The Constitution in Article 1.1 is very clear. The power of constitutionalism is drawn from us as citizens. So to that effect, it means legislation, amendment to legislation, and anything must come from ourselves, not the executive that we have actually elected. And in this, particularly to this election, time has already gone, but sensitization must continue. The earlier the better. After this election, we must keep on informing each other, citizens, so that citizens, youths, women, and everyone understand PR cities. They understand what are the roles of our MPs, what are the roles of our councillors, what are the roles of mayors, because that is where we miss it first. So if we citizens are going to identify the roles that our representatives are supposed to play, it means we hold them accountable. And even them, they'll change the way they represent. They'll do the right things, because many times when MPs, when they're coming, when you listen to their questions, they are basically speaking things that are outside their mandated roles, what they're supposed to do in Parliament. So it starts with us having an informed citizen. It means we are going to hold our leaders accountable objective. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Demian. I'll move to you, Honorable Christopher Kang'ombe. Your final thoughts, especially on the quality of our parliamentary candidates.
The quality of parliamentary candidates, it's an interesting one. Well, I'm seeing a lot of, sorry to say this, but an observation I have made so far, even from where I sit, taking the back seat in this election and watching the whole process unfold, I can tell you that there are many that are committing a lot of electoral malpractices. First of all, they are organizing football tournaments during campaigns, handing over trophies, handing over things that they are not supposed to be handing over in an election. You can understand some of them are new. And I think some of us are available to provide that free consultancy. Those that have reached out to me to ask for help, or Christopher, you've been through this whole process, what are the do's and don'ts? I've been able to guide, but I wanted to just basically state that, yeah, the desire to serve is there. There are a lot of young people that have come up and said, well, I want to be a member of parliament. I want to go and represent the people of this particular constituency. But there's a lot that has to happen. I think a year before election, we need to see more platforms given to young people to equip themselves with the knowledge that they need on, first of all, the role of an MP, but also how to win an election. Because clearly, most of us on this platform today, we are young people. We would want to see more young people in parliament. Are we going to let them go into parliament without giving them what they need? I think it's important. So after this election, my appeal to civil society, let's create platforms where we can equip young people with skills, the knowledge that they need. There are some of us who will never charge you for coming to share knowledge. I'm available at any time. The way I was called that I needed to come and share knowledge today, please get in touch. Civil society, this election is going to pass because we are a day away from an election. After this, create platforms. Call some of us who will give you the information that is needed for young people, because we have to start preparing for 2031. There will be many young people again that will show up that would want to be in leadership. We equip them with skills. Josiah, you understand what is in the law. You know very well that there are things that you've acquired through many years of learning. Demian, there are things that you've shared today that can help the next set of young people in leadership. We groom those young people, then we can talk about having people that can hold the executive accountable in the years to come, having people that will have the right skills. So my closing remarks, I think the desire from young people is there to go into parliament. Some of them still need a bit of knowledge. Others will learn the way some of us were learning as we were discharging our duties. I think those will be my closing remarks. And I'm grateful once again to the conveners of this platform for identifying me to be one of those who could give you the information that was needed for this interaction. Thank you very much, guys.
All right, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you in these interactions. Josiah, in closing, what would be your recommendation in terms of our law reform process? I know Honorable Kang'ombe has already suggested that we might do a petition concerning the mixed member proportional representation system. So, in addition, what would be your recommendation concerning our law reform process? Thank you.
Yeah, I think let me echo Honorable Kang'ombe and Demian's gratitude to ACA for organizing this platform. These are important conversations to have. The recommendation I would have, in addition to what the other panelists have shared, is that citizens need to take interest in their laws. We are a nation governed by laws, and we need to take interest in them. And I know sometimes these conversations make it appear that it's just political laws. No, there are a whole host of laws. There's a whole host legal framework, statute book in Zambia that governs different aspects of our social life, our private life, and citizens have to take interest in those laws because when they come to affect them, we cannot plead ignorance. So we have to take an interest in these laws. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of this conversation and most importantly, for accepting the invitation to share your knowledge on this important conversation as we head towards the elections. A big thank you much, gentlemen, for being part of this conversation and most importantly, for accepting the invitation to share your knowledge on this important conversation as we head towards the elections. And that's a wrap on this episode of our podcast series, Laws and Elections, here on our Ask Podcast. Our guests have been Josiah Kalala, Executive Director at Chapter 1 Foundation, Honorable Christopher Kang'ombe, a former Member of Parliament in Kamfinsa Constituency in the Ballot province, Demian Kashweka Bihinda, a law student at the Kwame Nkrumah University. This has been Chanda Chongo from the Ask Podcast by Alliance for Community Action.